Hello and welcome again. We're going to continue on with some of our Clydesdale fundamentals classes. And today we're going to look at training your eye on the breed's ideal limb. So we're going to focus on the bottom part of the horse in this series. So to give us kind of a start point on what we're looking for as an ideal, we're going to look at one of the breed's all-stars. So this is Kirkland Hill, Queen of Carrot. She was a 14-time Royal Winter Fair champion mare. And it's not like she kind of did it with light competition. This is when there were some of the best horses being kind of thrown at her, other Calder Cup winners, kind of the best that Canada and North America had to offer. She beat a lot of very good mares from the United States, and they were imported from Scotland, and other ones that were brought in and bred in Canada. She has, a great top on her, but she also had really, really great limbs that stayed fresh throughout her life. And one of the things that she has, right, she's sitting a little bit further back, but this is this wide, kind of beautifully sharp, muscular gaskin right here. So that's the part from here to the hock, right? Beautifully, and it comes into this point of the hock at a great sharpness and a great angle, right? Nice clean hock. She's got a really good width of flat bone. Flat bone is really important to the breed. It should kind of look like a 2 by 6 plank of wood, just in from the front, kind of, just this nice kind of uh, fine plank like structure, and then from the side, nice and wide, sharp, clean, flat. When you feel those tendons on the side of the leg, it's really hard to the touch. There's not a lot of roundness or fluidity to it. Um, the hock's the same way, kind of this. Some people say that they like a longer hock. I really don't. This kind of shape to the hock uh, is ideal for myself and some others, and really kind of we'll take a look at that a little bit further, right? So this is the Queen of Carrick as a 2-year-old mare. Right, we see this like really, she's really developing that nice width of bone, clean and flat into a good set pastern, nice kind of open hoof head, right, coming down to a nice foot, right. She's got a good pastern in the front, great, width of bone here, very, very flat. You see that Gaskin again, very, very, very flat boned horse. This is her as a yearling. So we see that same development that kind of, she won the Calder Cup this year a little bit earlier. She was imported into Canada after that. Then she was junior champion at the Royal Winter Fair that year the first time. But yeah, right, that nice clean hock, that structure, that sharpness here where it goes droop, droop, just nice and sharp, wide, right? That width and flatness is super important. Even as a yearling, right? She's kind of big footed, uh, and she develops into a mare whose joints really wear well over time. So it's not like she just kind of sat around and did nothing. She was also a driving horse, and she drove quite a bit throughout her life. And you can really kind of see in here, that nice kind of gaskin, how that kind of turns. Beautiful hock, set placement, and you can see that really width of bone that she's got, right? She's standing kind of a little bit pigeon-toed here, but um, good open front foot, great front pastern, and she really could move out really well. That's honestly how she defeated a lot of different mares that had won the Calder Cup, is that she really outmoved them. And she won the team of mares just as many times as she was champion. Her This is her second teammate that she's gone through. The first one was Dalfoil Donella, and then this is Bardrell Emma right here. So she went through kind of a series of mares. They could put her at any point in the hitch, right, from lead to wheel to any point in between, and she would drive really well, rock solid. So, right, she combines the kind of idealness of the breed, right? A driving horse, a horse that can move out really well, but also a horse that's built well, can stand this test of time, good tops and good bottoms. So, part of how she gets this quality, right, is through a long line of horses that she is bred to. And this is her sire, who is probably one of the best known sires in the breed. If you don't know who he is, spend some time looking through different things to learn about Dur Excelsior. Really a game changer in the breed. He goes, he takes some of the better blood from the male line. He goes back to Ball Green Final Command, another tremendous good breeding horse on his top side. He goes back to that Benefactor line and through his mares line, and he just combines both of them into this really great package. He wasn't really well respected as a younger horse, kind of towards the bottom of the pack. Uh, People kind of didn't really see his quality, except for John Young, who had a really good eye for a horse, kind of snapped him up and cultivated him into this 3-year-old that won the Calder Cup and then became a powerhouse breeding stallion. But again, we see this really tidy, sharp hock, right? Not very long, right? But nice, kind of sharp here. That beautiful kind of wide, sharp gaskin that comes down into that hock. And then this is kind of just painted a little bit to kind of accentuate the divide between. But, he's got a great pastern, great hoof, great width of bone. That's very, very flat. But that nice, short, tidy gaskin is super important to kind of keep that movement and get that kind of hock action that we really desire. So Excelsior still breeding along. Here's actually a descendant of Excelsior that's got different kinds of papers. She's a Shire, but one of Excelsior's sons, a couple of them, got Shire papers and did a world of good in that breed. So again, we see that translates over time. Super flat bone, great, pass around to a big hoof head that's really wide and open. Beautiful sharp hock, not too long, great width of bone, front and back, really nice, tidy. This is a hard horse to beat, kind of, no matter what breed she is. Just a yearling, really, really tremendous looking horse. If you can breed and find ones that look like this, you're really got yourself something special, and you're really onto a path for breeding some quality over time. So right limbs breed on, so it's important to pay attention to them. Here we have a great show mare called Milile Verna. Beautiful set to her pasterns. Nice high hock, clean throughout. She's bred to a horse called Dura Sensation. Very good flat boned horse, good hock on him, great show horse over the time. And then they produced this daughter. They produced a couple of daughters that were quite good, right? Nice, short, beautiful hock on her, great pastern, great set to those pasterns. We like to see a good length and a good 45-degree angle on those pasterns. She's got it, she's got the top too. And so that paying attention to that, especially from the mare lines, that makes a huge difference. If you're just trying to cross average mares with good stallions, you're just going to get a lot more average kind of foals. So let's start to look at some of the things that are not ideal. Now, to not hurt anyone's feelings or do whatever, we're not going to pick apart any horses that are kind of alive today, and we're not going to just kind of look at Perchons or Belgians to look at our kind of faulty horses, but I'll try to look at some Clydesdales that just have some things that aren't quite right with them. So here we have a horse with a decent gaskin, but way too fine, right? So here's an example of too fine. Just not enough flat bone. It's starting to kind of verge towards rounded, but if you see from that hock here, kind of where we connect, right, it's way smaller. It's a lot finer, it's a lot thinner, right? Not as much pastern, not as much hindfoot, but really the biggest fault here is that fineness of bone. It's just a little bit too light. Here's another horse. Terrible photo. This is another reason why it's important to, when you get a photo taken, right, set up the photo, work on setting up your horse, and getting the best photo because, right, she's kind of flopping all over in the rear and it makes her look pretty terrible. But again, too fine, right? She's a little too fine. Often we see horses that are a little too fine, also a little bit too narrow in that kidney girth, right? This one's a little long in that gaskin, not as nice and tight. She's standing up she's like standing out a little bit, but when we kind of drop a line from that rear rump, we want to kind of have it be hitting, and she's a little stretched out, a little long, but she's looking a little too fine and a little too plain in that hind leg. So now we're going to look at the opposite here, like way over course. This is a horse that won some things in Scotland, and some of the Scottish breeders get a little bit, I think, short-sighted as far as bone. They want them to drift towards way too heavy of a bone, way too round of a bone. They just start to become coarse, and they don't really move out as free as a hitch horse would. They kind of lose a little bit of their marketability. So again, we have a horse that's just way too rough. The hocks are way too filled, way too kind of, they're round here, they're round on the side, they're round across the cap, right? And that's pairing into kind of a round, heavy, thick hind leg that will carry fluid as it gets older, will be prone to scratches a lot more, will break down over time, right? And we can see that's coupling into, he's kind of over there at that pastern, right? It's there's more here, than there is almost at the hoof head. So just kind of a short, stumpy kind of pastern. This horse just really, it might move tight behind, but it won't move very attractive when you view him from the side, right? So they can get it maybe manufactured where he runs kind of tight together, but like he won't run good from the side. And for a kind of a dual purpose horse, like he doesn't have much value. He won't be able to produce decent driving geldings. He won't be able to produce mares that have any quality. The biggest mistake that people make, I think, in breeding horses will to take this type of horse and breed him to this type of horse, right? And hope that the two will come together. Usually all that you end up getting is kind of lighter round-boned horses or kind of plain coarse-legged horses. It's not a breeding theory that some of the masters in the past advocated. They like to stallion with a little bit of masculinity and power, but like not overly coarse, right? They wouldn't really be using, Craigie Mains wouldn't be using a horse like this ever, and John Young would not be using a horse like this. So go back to your history books, kind of look through what are those stallion men picking for stallions, right? What's working? How are we getting that? And it's not this type, in the rear leg. So that type of stallion usually produces foals of this kind of ruggedness, right? Like kind of just, he's okay across the gaskin, but he's going to this kind of thick, kind of undefined hock into kind of a stumpy leg, round, not much pastern, right? Kind of knuckling over at the pastern, just kind of a straight stump. This is what you used to see in old style shires too, that kind of got bred out. Some of it floats through Clydesdale blood, some of it floats through Shire blood still to this day. Right when you're using those kind of overly rugged stallions, kind of on average type mares, you tend to get a lot of colts and fillies that look like this, just really a little too heavy and a little too coarse. So this is another example of kind of like overdone. So like right, that hock's really not very smooth, short, but like he's getting that little teeny nubby pastern, right? Just a little nub. He's buckled over on it. It's paired with kind of a small foot, not very big and open. And this is just, paired with a short kind of a neck. Not a horse that's going to wear harness very well. Not a horse that's going to move out very well. Maybe from behind, if going slow, he'll move tight, but that's about it, right? Um, this is a horse that's not going to develop, as he goes forward. You can hope and pray, but with that kind of short pastern, um, it's just not going to bring anything to your breeding program in the future. So here we have another one, right? That's just not, this one was gelded. But again, you can see he's short pastern. He's kind of knuckling over at those pasterns, right? He's not really wanting to set into them nice and cleanly. We'd like to see that at a 45-degree angle, right? It's a little bit more upright, and that, he's kind of just knuckled over on them. Not super ideal. So now we go to another kind of fault that kind of happens through short pasterns and through different kind of growth periods, right? You see this horse is kind of up on his toes, right? His toes pointing down and his heels up. He's a little bit contracted there. Really tiny short pastern, right? Very upright pastern. Even in his front, he's set better on it, but it's not very long. It's a very short pastern, right? When we kind of look at this horse, if his tail wasn't in the way, we'd see a gaskin that's a little bit too long, a hock that's a little bit swooped. Some call it sickle hocked. It's just kind of not correctly built where it's nice and square and connects in nice and square, like some of the horses that we saw, like Queen of Carrot before. And we'll take another look at one that's got that, right? So when viewed from behind, she's nice and tight, maybe, but then when you view her from the side, right, this kind of comes in really low and long, and it makes like a little swoop, right? It should come in nice, clean, and straight, but again, it kind of swoops. That's that kind of sickled hock. It makes like a sickle shape. Again, a horse with short pasterns, right? We'd like to see her, with a nice, set to that pastern, a 45-degree angle. It's very, very short, and that's paired with kind of a foot that isn't super big. She's got hair, but it's not a very big open hoof. In the front, we see kind of, again, a little bit, she's back at the knee a bit, and we'd like to see her standing up much straighter. Attractive neck on her and stuff like that. But again, that construction through that hock isn't ideal. Here we have another one that's very low hocked, right? So when somebody says, well, this horse is a low hocked horse, that's what they're meaning, right? So her hocks are very close to the ground. They're there's not much width of cannon bone. She's got width there, but it's very short. She's also pretty down in her pasterns, right? Like, this one isn't as upright as the ones that we saw before, a little down, but like that's matching with this kind of low hocked, kind of a rounder shape to the hock. We like to see that cleaner, less fluid, less roundness, more sharp, kind of more square across the front of it. Very tight skinned on it. You should be able to see kind of a large vein that runs through, nice and taut. It's like some described it as like kid leather, like very fine leather stretched, across a joint, right? So it's a very, very fine looking skin. It's on a thick, rugged looking skin. It's fine, and you can see the detailing and the bone work across the front, and it's nice and flat. Another thing to note, if you're showing Clydesdale horses, putting on these type of halters really just kind of ugly up the horse. Stick to kind of a traditional rope halter or something similar. These white kind of, especially with the brow band, really kind of make the horse look kind of plain and ugly. So here we got another one. She combines kind of a few different things, right? She's a little fine. She's fine. And it's getting more towards rounded bone, right? So you can see that kind of roundness to the front of it. It's not as flat looking across. The tendons aren't as sharp and flat. That's kind of what's making that flat bone. So she's got a more rounded look. That's coupled to like like a heavier kind of hock, right? Down here on the bottom, it's kind of lumpy, bumpy, full. She's full across the, the caps of her hocks. She's not standing tight at all. If you were to stand from her behind, she'd be standing pretty wide. Um, Again, right, we see that fineness and we see that fine gutted horse, that really narrow, wasp waisted, it's called, light in the kidney area, attractive headset, right? But that's really kind of all that she's got going. So when you start to just breed only necks, only headsets, right, we start to kind of lose this quality of the Clydesdale horse. And that mare would produce something like this. Again, we see in that hock, it's not smooth. It's lumpy, bumpy, coarse, heavy on the curb joint. If you ever hear people talk about curbs, right? You shouldn't be able to see that. That should be nice and smooth. Not, she's got set to her pasture. She doesn't got a ton of length to it. She doesn't really have a big open hoof head to it. A little long here, not the worst, but she's a little long. But that's just like not an attractive construction, right? Like it's not coming into the hock. The gasket and the hock aren't really connecting smoothly and correctly. It's kind of looks like it's kind of been lumped on, right? Just kind of pushed into place. So that's going to create a horse that, isn't going to wear as she gets older. And that's part of the important thing about this conformation. It's not just like beauty pageant points, like some might say. It is functionality over a long period of time. Here we have another horse, like really a lot of trouble on that front leg, right? That front leg, not only is she not really standing up on it correctly, but she just isn't made correctly in it, right? She's back at the knee and it goes into a really, really short, straight, upright pastern, right? Usually horses with more upright shoulders will also be matched in the pastern. This one's particularly bad in her straightness of pastern, right? She's not going to really move out particularly attractive in the front. She's not going to have as much knee lift, and she's not going to set those down nice and evenly. A horse kind of built like this in the front is not really going to move out in the front well. Pair that with the hind leg, right? Not very much pastern in the rear again. Not the most attractive of hocks, smoothness, and really not, she's a filly, but, not a really big open foot on her. So as this mare matures, she's going to look kind of rougher and plainer and kind of stumpier legged as she goes on. So when we're talking about a mare that's kind of just plain in the hind leg, you'll hear that sometimes she's kind of just plain. This is kind of a mare that comes to mind with that. Good color, good everything about her, like attractive marketing wise, but just kind of a plain made mare. Uh, she's got some width to that gasket, but it's again not connecting in as smoothly and as correctly as you'd like to see uh, in a mare like Queen of Carrot, right? It's kind of just plain, kind of lumpy, kind of rounded hock, as we'd call it, because it's, not these flat planes. The bone is getting more towards rounded, right? Front, she's like way too fine. There's not really much width there. Back, she's fairly fine, but it's a little bit more rounded. She's got set to her pasture, but not a lot of length, and she overcompensates. That's kind of overcompensated by like this tall kind of foot, right? We'd like to see that foot a little bit more open, a little bit more flat. She's kind of got a really tall kind of foot. She'll never really grow like a big kind of a foot. She'll only kind of grow kind of this tall kind of a foot, which is not really ideal. So let's go back. We saw some of those ones. Let's take a look back at, our ideal. right? So here we got, right, that hock connection is just much more coming into the gaskin, right, nice, and then coming into that uh, cannon bone, nice and sharp and angular. That's what we like to see. That's what he's got, right? Nice short gaskin coming into that nice and tidy, and then that cannon bone is connecting it nice and tidy, right? She's got it here, right? It's coming in nice and clean to that hock, and then that hock is really coming out, or that cannon bone really is coming out nice and smooth right to the hock. And this creates a horse that kind of drives well, moves out well, lasts a while. I mean, this horse lasted, quite a long time in the show ring, and she drove out, really well. That's kind of the key to this conformation, why it's been built in, because it was built for horses to wear on city streets over time and be able to do that for a number of years before having to be retired back to the farm to kind of do farm work. Farm work on softer ground is a little bit more forgiving to incorrect limb type, but street work is really, really hard on them, right? So they have to have this kind of foot and pastern. They have to have this type of bone. Round bone just kind of breaks down. It's not, it's, people think that it's stronger, it's spongier, it's not quite, it doesn't have the wearing abilities. Horses with rounder bone, I just see them go lame a whole lot younger and a whole lot easier than horses with good flat bone. So that's what we're kind of keeping an eye on, right? These kind of ideal typed horses, whether they were from the 70s or they were, shown last month, they bring to them the short gaskin, the nice kind of sharp hock. Some call it a square hock, right? Because it kind of makes more from the side, kind of a square type shape. But sharpness to it, right? It's nice, clean, and it's flat. There's no bogs or bumps on the sides, right? And it connects into a nice flat cannon bone. Again, with that big open hoof head, that big open foot, that nice set to that pastern. That's kind of the key, right? We don't want them too fine. We definitely don't want them too coarse. That's what happened to draft horses in France and draft horses in Belgium. They just took their horses to a extremely coarse type, round boned, heavy boned, and they just start to look like cattle after a while, right? That's not really the bone type that we want in Clydesdales. We don't really want to produce more heavy, coarse horses that aren't useful for any other purposes besides just maybe some light halter horse showing. But even horses like this won't win very many classes. And we want that connected in nice and evenly. We don't want a sickle hocked. We don't want a low hock or a round hock. We don't want a overly plain, round-boned kind of horse. They just produce more of that same type. And we really want a horse that's good in the front leg and in the rear leg, right? Nice straight fronts, nice straight backs. We don't want any of kind of this. If this was a young prospect, I wouldn't be very excited about it. I'd be less excited to have a line of mares that go back to this mare in my herd. I'd be really not excited if this was the mother of a stallion that I was looking to breed to. I'd probably pick a different horse. And although we can produce nice color, nice markings, right, we do want to see a horse that can wear a harness, can hold up to work, can raise foals, and bring something to the table as far as continuing on an ideal breed type. So that's what we have today for limbs. We'll take a little bit closer look. I would encourage people to post some things like about limbs or different things on their own horses, and we can kind of talk about them more in depth without, really kind of dragging anyone through the mud. It will just be kind of a a learning opportunity. So if you feel bold and brave and you have questions about hock structures on horses, if you have questions about limbs and pasterns, right, post those as as a comment or as a new thread, and then we'll kind of talk about those, kind of evaluate those as each one comes in, and that could be a good learning experience. That's kind of why we have this as a private group, right? Nobody should be being like, "Oh my God, look at this horse," or whatever. It is a moment for kind of learning, but I don't want to just kind of randomly draw out horses that are still alive and kind of go over them. So that's why I picked some of these that are either long dead or haven't really produced anything that's still in the stud book. So that's the end. We'll see you next time. We'll try to go over some more details about feet and kind of an ideal foot shape in the next episode. And then after that, we'll kind of do a putting it all together type presentation. So hopefully you found this somewhat educational, and post some of your leg questions in the university forum.